Well, you wait 19 months for your first ranking title to come, and then two come along in the space of 2 weeks. An incredible fortnight for Judd Trump. He's won two titles in two different continents within the space of 8 days. And look, he's back to his best. There is absolutely zero question about that. I said in my review of the European Masters, okay, he lost the final to Barry Hawkins, but the signs are there. He looks bang on it. He even won just before the season started. He won an invitational event in China with Stephen Hendry, Jack Lazowski, and a couple of others. So clearly he's been doing the work on the table in the off-season. And it's paying off right from the beginning. He's playing really, really well. And, if we go back a few years to when he became the first player to win 6 titles in a season, it feels very reminiscent of that already. When he's confident and playing like this and he gets on a roll, he can win tournaments effortlessly. And what really emphasised the confidence that the English Open win brought was how easily he won this tournament. You go to the English Open, he was behind a lot, obviously in the semi-finals and final in particular. But even in his earlier matches, he was behind and he always found a way to come back and win. Last week, there was none of that. He basically got on top of his opponents from the get-go and just hammered them. The only minor blip you could possibly point at was the final when he was 4-1 up and then ended the session 5-4 behind. That could really affect a lot of players, having that big lead taken away from him. But Judd's just so confident. He just took it on the chin, regrouped in the sort of the interval, came back in the second session and played his best snooker. He's so good to watch when he's playing like this. Everything's going for him, the long pots. He can power them in, he can drop them in, he can play the deep screw from the bulk end. And then I'm even looking at his scoring as well. I've got Q Tracker up now. He's made 32 centuries already this season. That is insane. Players would struggle to make that in a 10 years sort of season or a 10-year spell. He's made that in 5 tournaments this season. If he carries that strike rate right the way through the season, he's going to obliterate the record of most centuries made in a season. He's the only player other than Neil Robertson to make over 100 in a season. I mean, it's early days. He might hit a little bit of a blip some point in the season, which would be understandable. But yeah, he's the man to beat. Players are playing well. Mark Selby's playing well. Okay, he's had a couple of early exits since losing that final to Mark Williams. But in general, I think he's playing well. Williams himself, he's playing well. Barry Hawkins, Mark Allen looks pretty on it as well. O'Sullivan's obviously won a title. So there's going to be players always who are going to be looking to topple him. That's the strength and depth of the tour. But as I say, he's won 6 tournaments in a season before. He's won 5 tournaments in a season before. When he gets on this kind of roll, he can be incredible to stop. Incredibly difficult to stop, I should say. And yeah, he's won back-to-back titles. The next tournament is the Northern Ireland Open, which he's won 3 times already. So every chance he'll make it a hat-trick of wins. Good luck to the rest of the tour trying to beat him. Look, I don't just want to focus on Judd. There's obviously other players in the tournament that made the tournament great. Ali Carter, really good run for him. His third final of the year, I want to say, which is really encouraging for him. He's always been a player that's kind of popped up every now and then with a title or a deep run in a tournament, but he's never really put any sort of momentum together. But yeah, 3 finals is definitely a positive step in the right direction. He played well last week. He played well in the final. He just came up against a player that is on top of the world at the moment. And yeah, for Ali, I think a lot of people kind of point to him as one player where you say, or you get asked a question, who do you think's underachieved, or who do you reckon could have won more in the game? Ali Carter's probably definitely a player that would come up in that conversation. But obviously he's been heavily blighted by injuries and illnesses, which you can't take for sort of lightly. But a very encouraging week. He scored some big wins, played well in the final, like I say, just came up slightly short. But he's comfortably in the top 16 as we move in towards the UK Championship, some other big tournaments. Can he qualify for the Masters? That'd be massive for him, a tournament he's never won, but he did get to the final a few years ago. But yeah, Ali's playing well, which I'm sure will annoy a lot of people who seem to dislike him because of some beef he apparently had with O'Sullivan. But yeah, definitely playing well. Other players that played well, Liu Haoshan obviously scored that massive win against O'Sullivan to reach the semi-finals. Aaron Hill, he impressed me as well. Wu Yize, he was a player that I identified in my sort of season predictions video as a player to look out for. He reached the semi-finals, which was massive for him. Again, ultimately just lost to a player that was playing way too well. Mark Allen as well, he had a bit of a return to form. He's not quite been at it this year so far. Obviously, he was last season's best performer by a distance. It's been a slow start to the season for him, but looked to be getting back to it last week, especially with that big win against Jack Lazowski. But yeah, it's another tournament where, even though it's been won by a big player, some Chinese players have sort of emerged and taken their chance well. I'd probably give Wu Yize my player of the week. I'd arguably share that title with Liu Haoshan. They both scored very well. But yeah, Wu Yize is definitely a player that I've enjoyed watching. Even before this week, he was playing pretty well. Now he's put a run together. So yeah, who knows what could happen with him. Probably not win a title. I don't think he's there yet. But if he can consistently get to just like the last 16 stage, I think a player at his ranking getting to the last 16 would represent a pretty good tournament. He could definitely be knocking on the door of a top 32 place within no time. But with all that said, it is all about that man. 34 years old and he's already landed 25 ranking titles. I don't think it's inconceivable to say that by the time he's 40, he probably will have about 40 titles. The rate that he wins them and the amount of tournaments that are on offer. And look, he's just so dominant, and at some point, the class of 92 are going to retire. Selby's going to retire. Robertson's going to retire. Murphy will retire before him. He's got so much time in his hands to build on that CV, which is already stacked and so impressive, that I would probably wager that he's almost guaranteed to be the most successful player in terms of the most ranking titles won. The only question that will be left is how many world championships can he win? How many triple crowns can he win? Whether he considers that as important as other people do, I don't know. But look, he's playing so well at the moment. You'd fancy him to win at least one of the triple crowns this season. Defends the Masters in January. Has a really good record at the World Championship. Full of confidence. The only thing that some people might say is, has he peaked too early? He's playing really well at the start of the season. What happens when we get into what a lot of people consider, the main events, the events that the top players should be targeting? But look, you can't ever guarantee when you're going to play yourself into form. You've just got to practice as hard as you can and hope that it turns out well on the table when you're in tournaments. He's done all he can. I don't think he's ever a player that's going to get burnt out. He's young, he's healthy. And yeah, with the UK Championship, I'll probably do a sort of small prediction video. And I know there's a few tournaments to go before then, but he is looking like he'll be a strong favourite. It'll be interesting to see when the draw comes out, which qualifier he plays, what the knockout stage will look like him as a route to the final. But yeah, he's going to be full of confidence. He's going to be difficult to stop. And yeah, the season's obviously got a bit of a break now. No snooker this week other than qualifiers for the Northern Irish Open, which starts next week. Judd Trump going for a fourth, going for a third title in a row. Would you put it past him? Let me know in the comments. But until then, stay safe, and I'll see you then.